Welcome back. Welcome back to another episode of the Bench Mob ENT podcast. As they will say on the Knuckleheads podcast, we live on location. We live on location in the backyard of Tone's residence. Nowhere special. But we got for y'all that are listening to this episode, we have on none other than it's family. Just like I say when my man GP come on, this is not a guest anymore. This is fam that's on the show. Chris Lindsey Hoops. How you doing, my brother?
I'm solid, man. I'm solid on this good Sunday, man. Just chilling. Weather's getting nice, I'm ready to go play off basketballs and going, bro.
Hey, see, that's the thing too. Weather's now getting nice over here in Jersey. Y'all seen some nice days over in Cali already. We just got off of like 2 weeks straight of rain. I'm like, I didn't know I lived in Seattle, bro. Like,
No, it is crazy. I mean, yesterday it rained really bad, and then today it's a little warmer. But we had some 90-degree weather like 3 days ago. Then it rains yesterday, and now for the rest of this week, it's supposed to be 85 plus. So I don't know what it is. I don't know where this rain came from or what it is. I don't know, but we here, man. That's why I stay in the house, bro.
hey, I'm homebody for the most part, unless this guy do something with the kids or wifey.
Right.
But I'm cool inside. You talk about it too. Like we in the thick of the NBA playoff conference finals. I mean, the game's still going on, but it's pretty much safe to say it's set, which means basketball, honestly, low key, NBA is coming to an end very soon. If we're talking conference finals, what are you thinking about doing, man? Once the season is done, like you hopping straight into draft talk, looking at the college players, the W. What's your plans once the NBA season ends? Because that's actually right around the corner.
Yeah, it's right around the corner. I plan on doing some W stuff, really locking in with that. I'm definitely gonna hit up the Drew League this summer, kind of get some stuff going. Then we still have the draft that comes up, and then you got Summer League, which is gonna be another good thing. I'm gonna try to go in Vegas. I'm gonna see. Hopefully, I can get out there and go check that out. But yeah, basketball is a 24-hour sport. It seems like 365. It just never stops throughout the year. It's a 12-month sport, is what I meant to say. So, man. Yeah, I got a couple things lined up, but I am gonna give myself grace, take some time, you know what I mean, which is gonna be good. But trying to be on that Kobe mentality. I ain't gonna let the offseason be too long. I feel like I come off a good year, so trying to get that feeling again. You know what I'm saying?
Facts. It's really that time to capitalize on it, especially once, like you said, it's a 12-month sport. This is the NBA Finals is done, but then you looking at a lot of teams is already starting who they're going to draft, and then of course the W is going to be fully ramped up at that point as well. So definitely, it's going to be locked in the whole summer.
And free agency too. Free agency.
Yeah,
that's another thing we got to.
We already know. We already. We'll talk a little bit about that in this episode because all signs point to it's going to be another crazy free agency this year. It's going to be. Even with trades, it's going to be a lot of movement again this year. The NBA is the best soap opera on TV, man. So definitely it's going to be jam-packed. 12 out of the last 20 teams to win the NBA Finals have been from the Western Conference. Is it cap or facts that the winner from the West this year will win the NBA Finals?
I think that might be a fact. I mean, not to say that the trend of anything has something to do with it, but I've seen from top to bottom, the two teams that will be in the Western Conference Finals probably have the better chance at winning the championship than the Eastern teams, and that's no slight to them. I just think I like what OKC has, I like what Minnesota has compared to the other teams between the Knicks and the Pacers. But I just feel like their time is now. So that's going to be a good series heading into it in the Western Conference. But I could definitely see either Oklahoma or Minnesota winning the chip this year.
I think there is some validity to that. I don't agree with the statement sometimes where people like the finals was really in the Western Conference Finals, because if you make it to the finals on the East side, even though it's not as competitive, there is some validity to you making it. So I will be intrigued definitely to see who wins and who pans out. If OKC doesn't win the finals though, right? Mm-hmm. Is it kind of like, is the league hoping in a sense for OKC to win? Because as of right now, the top seeds in the NBA playoffs are no longer in the playoffs. If OKC loses, does that kind of negate that the regular season matters? Because when you look at a Timberwolves team, they came in on the back end, and you look at the Knicks and the Pacers, lower seeds, not one of the top 2 seeds, and they're about to be in the finals.
Mm-hmm.
Does the regular season matter if OKC doesn't win?
I would say like yes and then no. You know what I mean? Like it matters for seeding and just your overall confidence that you have playing in the playoffs with your group because you still need to get those reps up and you need to win. But sometimes when the games are very close and you've been so dominant in the regular season, you see a lot of teams kind of falter and because they don't play any close games. But teams that kind of have to struggle a little bit or kind of go through some fight throughout the season, by the time the playoffs come, that usually is the best kind of test for them because they've had to play at such a high level for so long. So yeah, I think it does matter in some ways. The seeding matters too, as far as home court advantage. But as we've seen in the last couple of years, the guys have been able to win game sevens, game fives on the road with no issue or still home court back. It's like you play all those months for home court just for it to be gone in a game or two, just like we saw with the Knicks and the Celtics. And that's demoralizing because then you almost get the false sense of entitlement as if, well, we're supposed to win because we have home court advantage. Now, 10, 15 years ago, that really meant something, having home court advantage, because there was such a big discrepancy in talent. But now everything is a little bit more even. So it almost doesn't matter. More than likely, like the play-in teams outside of that couple of years ago with the Heat and the Lakers kind of making deep playoffs runs, you can get hot at the right time, which is good. But you still want to aim to have a really good regular season so you can avoid the play-in. You don't want to shuffle around and have the basketball gods mad at you because you're trying to avoid a matchup and then something ends up happening. And you have to account for injuries too. Obviously, you can't ever pick who's going to be hurt, but somebody's going to be hurt. So as long as you are building that momentum throughout the regular season, getting those reps up, I still feel like it has a significant impact on your postseason success.
I definitely think it has its value, but I could see how some people will review it. Hey, I want to be playing my best ball come time playoffs is around the corner. That's when I'll be playing my best ball. So maybe we see some teams taking that approach of trying to rest their players more because it's like, hey, it is what it is, and it's the honest truth. Sometimes 90% of the time, the team that goes deep, the team that wins it is the healthiest team. And it's not anything per se that you control outside of obviously putting work in the gym and making sure you're stretching and you're doing all of those things. But the Cavs, for example, hey, y'all got the home court and it didn't matter. As Donovan spoke about it, they didn't even win a home court game in the series that they exited out of, which is tough when you win all of those games to be able to have that home court. But obviously injuries played a factor in that as well with DG and Mobley. Very, very, very tough series. Hopefully they're able to come back next year. Same thing with Denver, where it's still on right now, probably in the last couple of minutes of the game. Injuries. Michael Porter Jr. is playing with one arm. Shout out to Aaron Gordon, though. Like, huge salute. You're playing with one leg, and he started off the game making a huge impact, but somebody else needed to step up, and this is one of those games where we see Jamal Murray not have a Jamal Murray type of game that we need. This wasn't on the docket. With watching that game, what's your thoughts on like Jamal Murray? Because he has the talent to be a superstar. We see the games where he might drop 45, but then there's games like tonight. There's games like today where he doesn't show up, and it's kind of like it's Jokic and Aaron Gordon on one leg, and nobody else comes to the party to play. Outside of Christian Brown, he had a pretty good game too. But specifically though, Jamal Murray, you are supposed to be the Robin to the Batman, and sometimes we don't get that consistently from Murray.
I just think now, like they've ran that same kind of scheme for so long that they've been doing it since what you can just go back to 2020 when they made their first conference finals kind of push. It's been the same kind of thing ever since then. Obviously, Jamal was out with that ACL injury after the bubble, and he missed that kind of like year and a half. But I just feel like they got to reinvent something between those two, where Jamal needs to be more aggressive on the ball or with the ball, and and kind of take on that kind of ISO scoring a little bit more without the help of Jokic. Because by the time Joker goes and sits down, then they're a lot easier to guard, it seems, because Jamal doesn't put that fear in like players as much as when Jokic is on the floor. Now, some players work better playing with each other, right? But then you still have to account for when a guy goes and sits down, if a guy misses a game or has a bad shooting night. Can you fill in the rest? Can you be one of the others? Or can you be like, you know what? I got it this time. Let me save you. And Jamal has the talent, but for some reason, it just doesn't get to that next level. And I think he's protected under that. He has a room kind of bubble that he's in, and he played a big role in getting it. But since he's not an all-star, I think he gets a lot of bail for that. But if he was an all-star caliber guard, he's an all-star caliber guard, but he's just not an all-star in the West. And I think that kind of knocks to him, but then it saves him at some point too. So the performances that he puts up is just too inconsistent in this day and age, and teams have caught up with that to where they're really going to have to make some moves this offseason, not to say to deal him, just to give them some more help to help him to help Joker, if that makes sense.
Nah, definitely some more flexibility. Seeing how this series turned out, they gave all that they had, but it makes sense why the ownership said, Calvin Booth, we gonna need you to come up off of that GM title. He did not surround Joker with the best available options and what best suits his game. After the title, and we see it way too often, teams win a title and they have the opportunity to run it back, and they have the roster that they should run it back, and they choose not to. And then you see the teams where it's like, hey, you got some players in your squad that's around 40, 45. They got AARP memberships, and you run it back with them. It's a balancing act where it's like maybe needs to be like a GM for dummies book to know when to pull the plug, when not to pull the plug. Lakers are guilty of that too. Should have ran that back with the Dwight Howard, JaVale McGee. You had something going there. But that's a whole nother topic, whole nother discussion. As a Lakers fan, still hurts my heart that we didn't run it back and did another championship, especially being that it was during COVID. So they didn't even get no parade. And it don't make sense for those Lakers fans that say the nonsense of let's just no, it don't make sense to throw a parade now. Like, it's long gone past. It is what it is. They threw a parade virtually on Zoom.
Yeah, that was crazy. Yeah, the city really wanted that. I think that's why they tried to turn up a lot when the Dodgers won in 2020 that same year. And then I know Braun was like, oh, yeah, we all need to do it together. And they're like, no, like, it's all good. And then when they had the Super Bowl here and then Dr. Dre and all them were out, LeBron was like, hey, man, and the Rams won. Braun was like, hey, I'm trying to get with that. They're like, nah, bro, you won 2 years ago. Like, it's all good. You just got to win again. But yeah, I think and that's the kind of, I know it's off topic, but like that's like with LeBron teams sometimes, right? It's hard for them to repeat because there's so many shuffling that goes on. If you can go back to all his finals runs that he's had, all his 8 straight finals, you can see there's a lot of roster turnover because you try to retool. Even with the Lakers, we all remember the interview he had on Road Tripping. And he was like, oh, we got Trez from downstairs. We brought him in there, and Marc Gasol, we got him, and we got this person, that person. And they were really good, too. They were fantastic starting out that year, even though they had like a month and a half to really get going. But, yeah, it's just hard to run it back, man. It's really hard.
Yeah, we're not going to divulge into that because I was one of the few that, said I don't think that was ever going to work. Marc Gasol was on that back half of the career, and that was kind of where we saw some of the change in the league, where it's like if you were slow-footed big, in the words of Pat Bev, slow feet don't eat, my boy. Slow feet do not eat. So that was a tough time. It's been a tough time as a Lakers fan. We appreciate Bron being over here, but I like to see some winning before Bron does retire. We have it set, the conference finals, that Timberwolves Thunder series. What's your prediction, and who's the X factor for both teams to win that series. I think the fact that we have the Timberwolves, Thunder, and Pacers, 3 of the 4 teams are part of low markets. The NBA front offices are somewhere. They popping bottles already. They're popping bottles already. One of those 3 teams could possibly win the finals from a low market franchise. But go ahead, that series. Who wins it? Who's the X factors for both teams?
Man, let me start with the X factors. I think that'll help me out a little bit more. On the margins, you're gonna see who's gonna be the most important guys that they have there. I like the Julius Randle matchup. I'm looking at it matchup: Julius Randle versus Jalen Williams. Out of those two, who's gonna be the guy to save Ant in SGA, right? And then you can put McDaniels. Is it going to be McDaniels or is it going to be Caruso? And then you're going to have Hartenstein. Is that going to be him and then Rudy? So when you kind of break it down the tail of the tape between those two or those couple of players, those are going to be the more important things. And I really like kind of like I would say the mindset that the Timberwolves play with. They made a big trade in the middle of or before the season started that everyone was a bit skeptical about. And they've been tested kind of like to our earlier point that we were saying throughout the regular season where they really had to fight hard and they got hot at the right time. And I do like that where Ant's game has transcended with his playmaking and decision making. And then I think that Julius Randle can have a bit more of an output than Jalen Williams has or can do as of right now. And Jalen Williams is still a young, phenomenal player. He's all-star, but Julius Randle is like on a mission. You know what I mean? And I really like top to bottom, kind of how they have their guys already. Those strong, quick, fast, athletic wings. It's almost like perfect. But then on the Thunder side, they got Case and Wallace. You still got Caruso, and you still got Chet, who starts. How important is Chet going to be in this series? That's something I'm looking forward to. But if I had that, I would probably go with Minnesota to win that series. But it will be close. It'll be like in 7 or something like that. So either team can win in 7, but I just kind of like what Ant is doing right now.
I know Evan and other OKC fans are not going to like my pick. They're not going to like your pick, obviously, but not going to like my pick either. I think it was very telling outside of this game that just happened, game 7. Jalen Williams for the series, not the best series. Minnesota is healthy and they're in position to take advantage of those games where he does have 0 for 8 and shoots 23%. Denver didn't have enough to take advantage of the games where SGA didn't get help or SGA didn't play the best game himself. Chet didn't play the best series. I think that's going to be a very important thing to watch. Y'all can't afford to have a series like that again. This Minnesota Timberwolves team, their others have stepped up consistently. Julius Randle, he's changed the narrative completely on him, his game. Is he a winner? All these different things is being talked about completely differently based off of how he's playing, because what matters most, anybody that knows basketball, football as well, baseball as well too, pretty much any sport, playoff time is where you really make your bones. It's really where it's like, all right, you dropped 30 in the regular season. You had 45 home runs in the regular season. What you going to do now when it's a championship on the line? Julius Randle, I feel, has shown up way more than Jalen Williams. I feel McDaniels has shown up way more than a Chet. So that's my only concern. I think Minnesota pulls it out. It'll be, like you said, probably in 7. I just think this is a very evenly contested matchup in regards of they both have wing defenders out the wazoo. They have some depth to their squad. Naz Reid could have a huge series. He killed the Lakers. Rudy Gobert, we not going to see him get the Lakers close out game 20 and 30 and all that stuff, but he still can give issues and problems on the offensive board, defensively. I think the Nuggets kind of gave them a blueprint of what they need to do to be successful, and they could do it better because they have more options and more help outside of Ant. They kind of don't have an answer for Rudy. Jokic obviously is bigger girth wise than Rudy, but Rudy could have some impact on that offensive board. Naj Reid as well. So I'm going with the Timberwolves. Sorry, OKC fans. I love y'all. I'm not a part of the bandwagon of we hate OKC or none of that, because sometimes anybody that picks not OKC were haters. I'm not hating. If they do make it, I'll be glad they make it. I'd personally rather would see though Minnesota in there, just something different. And I think that would be their first final shot, right?
Yeah, that would be the first one in Minnesota. Well, as the Timberwolves, because I know they kind of had the Laker
George
one kind of
Mikan and all,
mixed in
yeah.
there. Yeah, and then another thing too, this group went to the conference finals last year, right? So you have that experience, and they virtually had the same people. You literally just flip Julius for Cat, and how you see has had a better input. I mean, they put away two legendary players and teams in the first two and 5 games. Obviously, guys were hurt. Certain guys were hurt and everything like that, which you can't control. But you still got to go out there and win the games. Like, you know what I mean? And the fact that they were able to play that hard, to start peaking at the right time, and they've shown an ability to win on the road. And they weren't the favorite in that Lakers series, right? Like everyone kind of had them counted out, and then they took those games, and it's like, oh, so we got to take them serious now. But it's like they've literally had the same thing. And like to your point, having Naz Reid, who's going to win that matchup between him and Chet, who's going to win the matchup between Nikhil Walker, who's going to win the matchup between, the guys who have been there all together. And Shea, if they funnel him to the paint, and you got Ant, who's extremely athletic to close out, and then you have Naz Reid on the other side to close out, and then you have Nikhil, and then you got White Dante, who's even there. They have a lot of dudes who can give you 10 to 15 points and finish a game. Like, this is and for Oklahoma, this is their first deep playoff run that they've had after they've been favorited. And I don't think they expected to go 7. They did win a big, important game on the road in game 5, but that was the one that they were able to get. But obviously, if you sweep Memphis, that's just, they were a shell of themselves. So you really didn't get tested in that regard. And now you move forward to see what happens next. It's going to be interesting, but I kind of like what Minnesota is doing and where they're trending. But and also to your other point, the NBA is going to love seeing the smaller market teams kind of get some recognition, because then it helps fan bases across the world. And then you have a guy like Ant, who's already very lovable. People like him. He's a signature athlete. You could think of the Adidas rollouts, all type of stuff. And, we've kind of followed his journey from last season after watching starting 5. And then you see what he was able to learn with Quarter Gold. He's had his ups and downs throughout the season, media wise, but it hasn't deterred or stopped him, so that's going to be interesting to see. I'm excited for that one.
Now the Timberwolves they packed away the Golden State Warriors. That's a whole episode in itself, because y'all gonna get one win, just one more to possibly see Wardell in a game 6. That's a whole discussion.
Playoff Jimmy.
they got some questions to answer this offseason, because they've been trying to have that 2 timeline of we gonna have the young, but we also gonna be competing for a championship, because Steph got 3-4 more years left on him. That 2 timeline thing is they gonna have to make some decisions this offseason, and one of the decisions they're gonna have to make is with that man Jonathan Kuminga, who had an up and down playoffs, who seems he plays well when Steph isn't in the game, when Jimmy really isn't in the game. And Steve Kerr has alluded to some of his issues with Kuminga, that too often he misses Steph when he's open. Sometimes he has lapses on the defensive end. So for those that, sticking for Kuminga and whatnot, I see it. I understand it. But Kuminga's not, with clean hands in this situation. Has some room for improvement. Jonathan Kuminga next season will be a Warrior, A, B, a part of a sign and trade.
I'm gonna go with the latter. I'm gonna go with B and part of a sign and trade. I think that may be best for both parties to kind of move on, put him in a different opportunity, and just to kind of see where his career can go. Like you said, both guys have sides to blame. They get the slice of that blame pie where, you know, Kaminga only could do so much, and then they didn't put him in a position to do so. They kind of could mismanage his development a little bit. Um, so I think if he's in a different situation, he'll probably be a lot better.
Off the top of your head, from what you could think of, where you think would be a good fit for him of the teams in the league right now, and what role do you see him possibly being? Like, we didn't really get to, like you said, it was a little bit of a mismanagement of Kaminga. What do you think his role could be? Like, I don't think we was able to see what Kaminga could actually be, what his ceiling would be, even in another situation. So I'm gonna put you in GM role. Chris Lindsey Hoops, where could he possibly end up, and what would his role be?
I mean, I don't see him in a big role of where he can be like a number one option or anything like that. But he'll have to probably be on a team that's lottery bound ish just to kind of see how much he can actually play. Like your Washingtons, uh, Charlotte, something in that realm. You know, if you want to see where he's at career wise, it wouldn't be the best choice for him because then he'll just be playing a bunch of losing basketball. But even if he's like your third or fourth best player on a team that's like in the middle or kind of trending upward, I think that will be good. And he could be like a piece that can help out a team. He's young enough, he's athletic enough, he can score the ball. It's just all about the concepts. And in the Warrior offense, it probably just isn't tailored to his game the most. Like if he were to go to a place like Atlanta, right? Or maybe even Brooklyn, like a team that's on the cusp of getting there, I think he would be really good. So I would try to make a deal to kind of get him around one of those teams. Even I wouldn't send him to like Portland, I wouldn't send him to Washington, or maybe not more so Charlotte, but somewhere where they're like right there on that cusp and they're waiting to take it to the next level. I think he should be there.
You said Atlanta, and that made my eyes light up because that's a young team. They try to get out and running. Him on the fast break with Jalen Johnson coming off an injury on one side, Kuminga on the other side. That would be a beautiful sight to see. I don't know what they have to offer Golden State, but if somehow he ended up in Atlanta, a team like that, a young team where honestly it's no championship in their future, they could say that because every team is supposed to say that we're trying to win a championship. That's not happening currently in Atlanta with how that roster is set up. And you made a good point with that too. Like, of course, you want to be on a winning squad or you're playing winning basketball. But even when we look at the draft coming up, I don't know if we'll ever really see the fullest potential of Cooper Flag because you're coming into a team with Hall of Famers. When you come to those teams that are on the upward or lottery, they're on a downward, you get to see the full. And the cupboard is bare. We get to see the fullest. You don't have to, you come second fiddle to this player. You don't have to worry about, this is the highest paid player. This is a vet. Coop is coming into that situation where you got AD, Hall of Famer, Kyrie when he gets back. Oh, yeah, Clay is still there. It's the pecking order has you a little bit further down. So he's a good player, obviously. He'll make an impact. But I don't know if we'll ever see that full Cooper Flag on the what's his ceiling. I don't think we'll ever be able to see his ceiling coming into a team like that. You get in where you fit in when you come to a team like that.
Right. Yeah, it gets difficult, and we haven't seen that happen in the NBA in a very long time, where the number one pick goes into a team that's already kind of put together. There's different examples in the league that you had, to kind of go based off of if they had a bad season or missed the playoffs or something like that the year before. But we probably won't see his full potential until, and the position he plays is kind of already taken care of. So unless Dallas starts to move a few guys around just to make that room for him to do that, then that's fine too. But I guess we're going to see, even think of the number one pick last year, we didn't get to see much, you know what I mean? Or even with Reed Shepherd, You don't get to see a lot of those things kind of happen. So that development can be stifled depending on the roster makeup. And you don't want to just move teams and players just solely fact off of, well, this is what we have now, but you got to look in the future too. You know what I mean? Like if Cooper Flag would have went to Philly, how that would have looked, or if he would have went to the Bulls, like, you know what I mean? Like, and that's when I think with Jonathan Kuminga, he could be better served going to a place, again, a team that maybe just missed the playoffs, but they're right there. And then they could take that next level with him being a consistent third or fourth option or second option on most nights. Like if he was in Philly and let's say Paul George got flipped and went to the Warriors, and if they lost Jimmy, then that's Paul George in that slot with Draymond and those guys, a better shooter, can still drive. He'll be open a lot. He has a high IQ, can do all the other little things. And you put Kuminga in Paul George's spot. Now you pairing him with Tyrese Maxey. You can play a lot of heavy minutes with those two. You can also pair that up with Joel. So you kind of have a little bit more that you can get. But, I guess we'll see how that's going to go moving forward.
Hey, so you mentioned Paul George. That just made me think about this, and I think again, because Hoop, I could spring on some of these questions wasn't a part of the plan, but Paul George is back to podcasting. Podcast P is back out, and he's guns a blazing. He's hopped on the pivot. He's with them, and he got Willie and
Wallow Gilly.
Wallow and Gilly. I was mixed it up. I said Willie.
Willie and Gilly.
He had them on that. I think that episode is dropping tomorrow. And I think he said on the pivot, he mentioned how he was like, in today's NBA, it is very difficult for there to be actually lockdown defenders. And he talked about himself, like he feels like he's one of the better defenders, but because of how the rules and everything is set up, it's not the most conducive for defenders. So you try to do your best and you got to tip your cap to, the goal is I'm just trying to make it as difficult as possible. When you think about this past season that just happened, right? Who comes to mind in the league right now that are some of the best perimeter defenders with all the rules being catered to the offense?
Automatically, I think of guys like Dyson Daniels. He's a great perimeter defender. He's real pesky, athletic, long, can get in between passing lanes and can really like mess up plays a lot. And he's super athletic. I think of Derek White, another great perimeter defender who can guard multiple positions as well. So those two specifically come to mind right away. And then out west, it just it's all about your determination, how much you really want it, right? You can think of a guy like Jaden McDaniels, another one, right? Another great lockdown defender. He can guard 1 through 4, some 5s in this league. You need guys like that, you know what I mean? And I think he does a phenomenal job at that. Gobert, even when there's a switch, he can try to hold his own, but you're not going to get any taller. So that just messes up the trajectory of your shot, which comes in as a win for the defense if you're able to secure the rebound. And a lot of things, you're not going to get many rebounds from Rudy. So I think a couple of those guys, those are the ones that like come to mind when I think of like defense in the league. And I'm sure I'm missing a couple of them. But I really like even Shea. He'll get to it. Caruso, those guys will play defense, and play both ends. Ant kind of gets in passing lanes. He'll go in for a block on the help side or chase somebody down. So there's a lot of guys I still that can get it done from the perimeter too.
One of the perimeter defenders that you didn't mention that I know he takes pride on that side. He is considered one of the best two-way players, Jaylen Brown. So it kind of full circle with the conversation of the last two things we were talking about of, sometimes being in situations where the potential could get stifled because you're on such a loaded roster. Some would say that might be the case with Jaylen Brown because that Celtics team is loaded. But next season, at least until that second half going into the playoffs, the Celtics will be without Jason Tatum, which is obviously a huge piece and against contrary belief to some, the best player on that team. Next season, what do you see that season being like for Jaylen Brown with no Tatum? Do we see a type of absolutely supernova type of season, most improved player conversations? Or will it be more so of he puts out his normal production and is still playing within that system?
I think it's going to be more of the latter, where he puts out more of his just regular production, maybe with the uptick in scoring and shot attempts, obviously. But the way their offense is ran, outside of them shooting a billion threes, is going to be predicated to how their looks are in their offense when Jason is on the court. If you notice the last couple of games, they did play a lot faster with a little bit more speed. Because Jason is more than likely more considered an isolation type player where Jaylen can get it and just make a decision due to his athleticism, how strong he is, and stuff like that. But I think you're going to see the same output, going to be an all-star. Maybe he can get between, 25, 26, 28 a game, somewhere right there. And that's considered like fifth best in scoring in the league these days. Like, you know what I mean? And again, his shot profile, it's going to mean a lot, of him getting to the rim, him shooting pull-ups because he likes to get to the mid-range, which is good. And he shoots threes. And then with their roster going to be completely different because they can't retain so many of those guys. Now you've really got to think how they're going to look moving forward. But I think he's going to be at his regular production. He's going to see a little bit more of an uptick in his scoring, maybe by a point and a half, maybe 2 points or so. Nothing up a lot higher, which inevitably will probably drop his percentage. So you gotta keep that in mind too. But I think he'll just be regular. And team wise, they'll probably be around the play in ish because it's hard to win that many games with just one guy like that. So I think he's good with the right pieces around him. Good to get you between 40, 45 games, which will probably get you a play in, or depending on how bad the East is, a 6 seed.
I'm very intrigued to see that next season. I think a player that really will probably have a breakout season. I think we might see Derek White step up even more. We saw a little bit of it in the playoffs. That's the thing that's so great and crazy about Derek White is not only will he guard the other team's best perimeter player on most nights, on every given night, we've seen that man could go drop 30. He could go drop 40. To have that type of energy while having to play defense and put out those numbers, and typically is an efficient 30 or an efficient 40, I think we see him have a breakout season next year. And someone on the likes of like a Peyton Pritchard. Also, they signed him before the playoffs started. I don't think he got any playoff burn, but JD Davidson, I think we might see him get some playing time. Might see him be able to actually now get on the NBA court. He's been in the G Leagues, averaging something crazy like 28 and 12 or something like that. So I think he can help out while Tatum is gone. He should be able to get some burn and help out in that team. Like you said, they'll still probably win 45, 40 games. The product and the system works beautifully in the regular season. Their concern is going to be what it looks like next year in the playoffs, which, Lord willing, we still be here. We'll talk about it then. The team that got them to Cancun, Saloon, on 3 was the New York Knicks. I'm sure as you've seen, Manhattan was crazy. It looked like an absolute zoo. I don't get the fan bases that when they win, they go destroy the property of where they live. I don't get that part. I don't know why you celebrate that way, but that's what they did. That's what we all expected to happen in New York, and it happened. They are against the Pacers. Looking at that series, before we even get to X Factors, which I know this is probably one of the X Factors, before we get your prediction, the best point guard in that series, is it Halliburton or Jalen Brunson?
That's a tough question, man. That's a really tough one. And then in these days, it's all about what is considered a point guard. You know what I mean? Is it the traditional pass first, or are we doing a scoring? Because both guys can do both of them at an elite level. But whereas Jalen is a little bit different, he's more score first because he spearheads a lot of that offense. But his scoring is so potent that he can set other guys up. Whereas Tyrese, he'll pass and dish first, and you forget that he could shoot a 32-footer and lace it, or he can drive to the rim, or he can even dunk. You know what I mean? So that one, if I had a coin next to me, I'll probably flip it and I'll probably give you the answer, but I don't have any. But I'm gonna go with Jalen Brunson. I'm gonna go with JB. I kind of like what he got going, what he's doing, how he's putting the team behind him, and each of those teams follow the demeanor of the leader, which is really nice. Neither of them are rah in your face kind of guys. They're very low key. They get the work done because they both had to grind to get to where they're at. You know what I mean? So yeah, I would say Brunson in that regard.
Hey, I hope maybe it'll be dope. I don't know if they'll recant and change it, but for the Pacers to get this far, I hope he can at least be in the arena. Maybe I'll keep him in the locker room and y'all lock the door. But if Halliburton's dad could be there, because I know for him, this has got to be huge. Like for both Hallie and his dad, like, yo, like you just mentioned, this was not what anybody thought or predicted when he got drafted, especially with the Kings. They had a log jam at point guard. This wasn't a thought process. Praise be to God, he was able to get out of Sacramento. Because I don't know if we would have saw this in Sacramento with how they run their franchise, but that was a complete sidebar. Like, I know for the family, it hit different that they're at this point. They're in the conference finals again with a possibility to go to the finals as the Indiana Pacers, small market team, player that was voted most overrated. This is huge series, huge opportunity coming for them. Who's the X factor for both teams? And then what's your prediction?
Let's see. So for X Factors, again, I'm thinking of all the ancillary guys marred on the margins. As JJ Redick likes to refer to them, the Alfreds, right? If you remember the Dark Knight movie, the first one, Alfred is the one who saved Batman. So you always need somebody to come save you as a superstar. That's an integral piece, a part of the team's success. I think of on the Indiana side, the two players that I'm watching are going to be Neesmith and Matherin. And then I'll throw in Nimhard in that as well. And then for the Knicks, I'm going to be looking at OG along with Hart and Bridges. So those three guys I'm looking at to see who's going to help Jaylen and Hallie, because then you're going to have to think of Cat and Siakam. And then you still got to account for Turner with Mitchell Robinson. So it's going to be a pretty even matchups. I feel like in both conferences, both of these are going to be pretty even. You can't go wrong with either pick. And I don't think anyone's going to hold your foot to the fire unless you're a part of like the actual fans of each team. But you know, the Knicks fans are going to probably be the more overwhelming portion of it, which is cool. It's always good when they're winning. So to see how they're going to put that together is going to be very important. And I'm thinking of, if someone has a bad game, what does that bad game look like? If Cat has a bad game, we've seen what that does for the Knicks. It's hard for them to kind of absolve that. Whereas if Siakam has one, it's not as bad, right? So it either way, it's going to be a toss up. But what I would like to see versus what I feel like is going to happen is two different. Obviously, I would love to see New York Knicks get to the finals. You know, I lived in New York for 5 years. I was there during the Knicks tape era, so I'm like honorary. You know, I used to walk, take the train to the Garden off of 34th. You know, I still know how to get there and everything. You know, right there in Midtown. So I still try to, get out there as much as I can, hopefully soon. But with the Pacers, they were here last year, right? Without the injuries, they challenged the Celtics those couple games. The way that they're playing, not carefree in a bad way, but mistake free. And then they have the coach. I feel like their margin of error for mistakes is a little bit wider than the Knicks because they don't have the pressure on them of the media, the NBA, everyone's saying you got to do this, which they've been able to handle thus far. But now with a trip on the finals to the line, now we're going to see. But with all that being said, if it goes 7 and the game is at the Garden, it's hard for me to go against the Knicks. And they went 7 last year. So I think I'll probably have the Knicks winning that one in a very close 7 games, but losing all the road games.
I'm going with Indiana, man, only because I got questions on Tibbs. I don't know. I don't know who's on the coaching staff. I don't know if he doesn't listen to his coaching staff, but offensively, it's god awful at times. It is. It is abysmal at times. It is literally like same thing it was in Chicago. Hey, Derrick Rose, save us, and the rest of y'all stand and watch in awe of Derrick Rose. Same thing we see sometimes with the Knicks. Y'all got some people that could actually put the ball in the hoop with OG, Mikal. They still don't seem like they figured out how to optimize Cat. That's where I'm concerned, where I think Tibbs might lose them this series. Not that the Knicks are like some bad team, and I think the Indiana Pacers are so far and head, shoulders above them. I think because Tibbs be struggling offensively to figure out how to even get Mikal involved. That's where my concern is. And I think that's going to bite him in the butt. And I think Rick Carlisle is going to have a game plan and do a better job coaching. And the thing is, I was wrong. I openly admit it. I said, hey, when they come to the playoffs, Pacers about to get it. They don't play no defense. They've been playing defense. Rick Carlisle got them playing defense. I wouldn't say they're the 03, 04 Pistons and not like that, but they playing defense. They playing some defense. So I think the Pacers, they could even win in 7. I could see that being a part of the Tyrese Halliburton, part of the allure, part of the story again, and becomes one of the, the Knicks haters and one of the villains in New York Knicks history from another Indiana Pacers player to break their hearts. I could see it happening, especially on the other aspect of, I think Brunson is the better point guard, but it depends on what you want, because if I'm starting a team, I think I will go with Hallie, being that 6'6", and is pass first. He's giving me shades of a taller Steve Nash, to the point where I sometimes, just like with Steve Nash, I want him to actually be more aggressive. That's how I view it. So I think I would like to start with a Tyrese Halliburton. I am Smurf Gang team president. I love my short guards, being a short guard myself. But if I'm being objective and starting a team, give me the 6'6" point guard that got this team. They doing a track meet every single game, and they're kind of debugging the myth that, when you get to the playoffs, it slows down. You don't score as many points. Them jokers in Indiana got something. They saying something a little bit different over there. So I think Indiana pulls it out, which that's going to be Indiana in the finals. Oh, man. Adam Silver going. David Stern might. He in his grade. He lit.
Oh yeah, he ready. I mean,
lit.
those are really good. Those are really good points. And again, like I said, and even to your point, their mistake margin is a lot wider, where no one really expected them to be here. They don't have to carry any pressure, and I feel like Miles Turner can win you a game instead of what's Buddy's name? Mitchell Robinson losing you a game, right? Because he could stretch the floor out, pump, and then drive. And we already know Mitchell can't move his feet that well. And then when they're going to strategize and start fouling them, and then, you're going to get guys like that, send them to the line. Can he miss another 6 free throws and air ball somewhere the crowd has to cheer him on? We've seen them lose games at home, but we've seen the Pacers come into anywhere and still win with no issue, regardless. You know what I mean? And they've been getting the job done. And they have literally the same exact team that they had last year, and they just added it got Neesmith back. I mean, Mathurin
back.
Yep. Who was missing last year. We saw them push the Celtics to a really close game in overtime in Boston last year with the Jaylen Brown 3. They were on their way to win that game. Then Hallie kind of missed the rest of that series, and they had some other big injuries. So they're right there. But yeah, it's like the reincarnation of Reggie Miller, man. They got it right. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, I think Rick Carlisle was on that coaching staff in 2000 with Larry Bird. I think he was.
That would be
I think.
wild deja vu.
Don't quote me on that.
If that is the case, that's a wild deja vu moment right there, for sure. Now, me, you, shout out Tanya, have talked about. We still ain't heard who the MVP is. I think the NBA. I don't know why they've dropped the ball with that, because what ends up happening is, let's just say Nikola wins it. You're going to have an outpour and an outroar from fans because y'all waited too late. And what we just saw was they lost in 7. So some are probably going to be like, yo, what? I should have went to SGA. They should do it before the playoffs start. And one of the things that happens when we talk about these awards, especially the later we get into the playoffs, when you look back on the playoffs, sometimes we focus then on the last 2 teams, like, oh, this was the best player in the playoffs. This player did the most. But sometimes we don't look at the entirety of the playoffs. Based off what we've seen so far, first round, second round, who do you think has been the best player in the playoffs?
Man, that's gonna be a tough one. There's so many ways that you can go. Uh, we mentioned him earlier. I really like what Julius Randle has been doing this entirety of the playoffs. He's taken his game to another level. He's won them games. He's defending at a high level. He's passing at a high level. He's reading screens. He's scoring. He's doing everything, and he's kind of like the motor for Minnesota in a lot of ways. And when he needs to step up, when Ant needs him, he's there. When he needs to play another role, he does that too. So he's kind of putting to bed a lot of narratives or things that were surrounding him. But for me personally, just from what I've seen, I feel like he's been one of the best players in the playoffs for sure.
Based off of who's left, the 4 teams that's left, who has the most to gain this playoffs? Now, that could be the player, that could be a team, that could be Adam Silver. Who has the most to gain that's left in these playoffs?
If I had to pick for that, I'll probably say SGA in Oklahoma. You know, they've had top seeds these last couple of years. They built themselves. He's got the marketing. He's more than likely going to win an MVP. This is his time. All his contemporaries have been to the conference finals, right? Ant's been there. Luka's been there. Even Trae Young has been there before. Now this is his time to really put that. So I think he has good pressure on him, where I don't think that anything will be too disappointing if he doesn't get to that next level. But then he's going to have to remember that now it's time to get moving forward, right? Like he's going to have to get there. So he's going to have to show it, and his guys are going to have to roll with him. But I would say Oklahoma probably has that.
Who has the most to lose that's left in the playoffs?
Let's see, most to lose. I don't know. I think since it's newer teams, I don't think there's anyone personally that has something to lose per se. Um, Maybe the Knicks more or less because they're the biggest out of all the teams, just because they're the most identifiable team, the logo, the fans. We see everything, how they're trending on social media. They have the biggest fan base. So at the pick, I'm gonna say the Knicks fans. They got the most to lose.
I'd say the Knicks fans, and I say Tibbs. I think
On him too.
last series, I think every series going forward, that job is on the line. Like, how do they look in this series, whether they win or lose? Honestly, whether they win or lose, like my man Jared said, it might be time for a new voice, period, inside the locker room. Like, only way I think he secures his job is a Mike Malone type of situation. You win a finals, and we hear years later afterwards, like, nah, we was about to fire old boy. He won the chip, so we had to push the brakes on it. Think that's the same situation that Tibbs is in, because not going to rehash the conversation, but offensively, he has yet to actually improve and mature as a coach on that regard, or get the right coaching staff to help with that. And again, it might be the right coaching staff, and he just don't listen. I don't know. I'm not in the locker room, but it's very, very weird that it's still at this point offensive is a dire need for Tibbs teams. Most disappointing in the playoffs so far. It could be from the teams that exited. It could be from how some of the teams that's played so far. That's left. Most disappointing in the playoffs. Players, coaches, however you want to go with it.
Let's go with we mentioned him earlier, Jamal Murray. feel like this was a formidable year for him to really show that he could take it to the next level, and he just never did. He was relatively healthy. I know he was sick, like a game or something like that, but he came in pretty healthy. But yeah, I would say he was most disappointing to me. Nothing too major, but just like I was just expecting a lot more from a guy of his caliber.
I just want to put out there for the people that have been saying, Jimmy most of the disappointing and playoff Jimmy was more so playoff Jim. I think people have to remember Jimmy Butler was there to help them win with Steph. You wasn't bringing Jimmy to carry a team. And at this point in his career, that's not the Jimmy that y'all was getting that was going to carry a team. So I think people got to keep that in mind. Jimmy Butler was there to help in those minutes when Steph wasn't on the court, to help take a little bit off of Steph's shoulders, not to then take what was on Steph's shoulders and put it on Jimmy's shoulders. I think people got to remember that. Like, that's not what he was bought there for. And to ask a player of that at that age to, hey, turn it on, go get 35 right now. That's asking a lot of him, especially when the entirety of him being in Golden State, that's been his role of, let me help and assist Golden State to get back to the mountaintop. Make it easy for Steph. Make it easy for Draymond. Not Steph is out and we need Jimmy to turn back the clock. Fans, sometimes we get the fandom messed up, man, because a lot of y'all in real life can't turn back the clock yourselves in y'all real life. So that's one thing that's very interesting. And real quick for y'all that may not have seen, because I'm not on Twitter heavy like that, but in the conversation of fandom, we had a little conversation where KD had Tom yesterday. KD had Tom. So for those that's watching, you can see the conversation on there that was referencing KD's time with the Nets and referencing that basically he said that, hey, he felt that KD got a little injury and quit and just up and up and left the Nets. Chris Lindsey Hoops. Do fans sometimes, when it comes to their favorite players, when it comes to star players, superstar players leaving teams, sometimes ignore the bigger picture and only look through the lens of my fandom and my team isn't as good anymore. We hate you, F you, you have no reason to leave.
Yeah, that's literally what it is. I think they let their fandom take over their sense of reality and what it is, and then they don't put the blame on the proper people. Or sometimes something just doesn't work out. Not everything is going to be like how it is in 2K, where you just fire it up and you can move players around. Guys still have to play. Things still have to go right. They have to put the team around. And even back during that time when KD was there, he picked the Nets to go there because that's what he wanted to do. And they were gracious enough to extend him and help him out when he was coming off an Achilles injury. They still believed in him, and he gave him one of the best, performances and seasons that they had in their franchise's history. It within recent memory, I would say. And I just think that some fans just get ungrateful. I know like Kay, he likes to talk hoops with everybody. That's nice to have a superstar who's that human that talks to people. And usually, as we just seen the name that popped up, it's a person with a parody account that's saying these things, you know what I mean? And it's just like it becomes a narrative. So whatever people see on their timeline and it supports their thought and their idea, that make that reality. And that's not realistic. That's not real life. Kevin came there just as much as Kai came there to play hard. Certain things didn't work out, and they had a small window. They could have injuries, other things outside of basketball took over, but he gave 110% every single time. But people, every game is a legacy game for some. You got to go out and score 95 points and do all this stuff because it worked in 2K the last couple times, but that's not realistic. So once people get a better grip on real life in their own personal life, then they'll see it's not like it. Basketball don't work that way.
Yeah, I think it's a tough thing sometimes where we aren't, even though we are in the age of kind of like everything is out there on social media, we still aren't privy to a lot of these things that's going on behind the scenes. We hear a lot of times once players retire how like, yeah, the ownership, they didn't make this trade happen. The ownership didn't put the best players on the roster for us to win. The ownership didn't support me during my time of, i.e., Kyrie, of I'm not deciding to go with the vaccination mandate. I didn't get support from ownership, so I wanted to leave. Like, there's a lot of things that factor into these decisions. And some players, obviously, we know they money chasing, ring chasing. But part of that still, though, is on the fans in regards to the ring chasing, because that narrative of ring culture, I feel I wasn't alive in the 60s. I wasn't alive in the 70s. One lie back then. But I feel in this era, since I've been growing up, it's even heightened even more that, yo, if you don't get a ring, you suck. We had conversations that, like, Charles Barkley, please go. YouTube is free. Charles Barkley was like that. You ran into a buzzsaw called the Chicago Bulls with Michael Jordan. Karl Malone, John Stockton, really like that. You ran into Michael Jordan and the crew over there. Olajuwon got his rings because MJ wanted to go play baseball. If MJ didn't go play baseball, I don't know if Olajuwon gets rings. Like, and Olajuwon was like that. Like, it's crazy sometimes how we as fans could view things. And I see why players want to control their narrative. And it's that balance of, I got to control my narrative so there's not smut on my name. So y'all really know what's going on. Last thing before we get out of here, so far in the playoffs, now it might be this player that we already mentioned, but who do you feel has changed their narrative the most in the playoffs?
Like I mentioned already, Julius Randle probably would be the main one that comes to mind. Again, he exercised a lot of demons that he had going against him. And I didn't know that that many people had felt so highly about him those times in New York because, the way he exited being hurt last year, not showing up, sitting courtside or sitting with the bench, people were questioning things. And it was kind of a relationship that ran its course. But people forgot he chose to come to the Knicks when they weren't getting a lot of free agents. But, some of the Knicks fans wanted a bigger fish. It's like, bro, he's an all-star. Like, he came there for you guys when you didn't have anything, and he got you to the playoffs, got you to a good record ever since Melo. So the fact that he's been able to go through a big transition like this, move to Minnesota, he's a signature shoe athlete with Skechers. He's doing it up. So I know we mentioned him a lot, or I've mentioned him personally a lot, because I was out here in LA when he got drafted. So just to see the potential of where he was at and how he got hurt his first 14 minutes of his pro career and then went, played for the Lakers for a couple seasons with all the young guys. And then he went to New Orleans and had a season there. Then he went to the Knicks, and now he's here. He hasn't had the easiest journey dealing with injuries and stuff, but he's been able to change his mentality. He's been able to change the way he goes about his business. And you can see he's got his joy when he plays because he's around an infectious personality like Ant and a team that fully embraced him. So I think that really unlocked him, and that's what he needed. So for me, I think he's been doing the best for sure.
Yeah, Julius Randle got some flowers and some love this episode, and rightfully so. Definitely changed. I feel like you said he's changed the narrative. Some of the questions and criticism was warranted with how we saw some of those player performances, but he's done completely better in that regard. And it just popped in my head, and I gotta ask you before the next time you get on, because we're seeing now with Nikola out, there's none of the like OG superstars part of the playoffs anymore currently. Are we looking at the changing of a guard in the NBA? It's no LeBron in the Eastern Conference in the conference finals. It's no Steph in the conference finals. It's no, even he's not one of the OGs, but there's no Tatum. The Celtics are in the conference finals. We don't see Nikola Jokic in the conference finals. KD didn't sniff the conference finals. Is it a change on the guard happening right now?
Yeah, I'm gonna have to say that there is. It just reminds me of like back in like 98, 99, after Jordan retired in 97, 98. I think you had guys like Shaq, you had Kobe, Tim Duncan, KG, Sheed. You still had Stockton and Malone. But they were kind of on the tail end of their. I think it's kind of like in the same vein where it's kind of getting to that point where we're seeing the newer young guys get their chance, which has been nice to see. I know a lot of people like more familiar faces and some familiarity, but this just shows you like you got to watch basketball. So when the playoffs come, you know who to pick. You maybe even know who to root for, and it's good to learn who these people are because when you look at the All-Star game and they see all these people like, well, why is he an All-Star? That's not LeBron. And it's like, he's not going to play forever. Steph's not going to play. KD, they've done their time already. They put their blood, sweat, and tears into this game. They've lost at a high level and they won everything at a high level. And a lot of their duels were all with each other and against each other. So, I think that we can finally feel good with knowing that the game will be in good hands moving forward to the next generation. And we're going to see some stars be made in these conference finals and finals for sure.
I completely agree. I think these playoffs is a win for the NBA front offices because it's been that conversation of nauseum of next phase. Who's the next phase? Hey, we can figure it out, and the higher ups and all those can have those conversations. But in regards of basically some having the concern that the product is just going to fall off the face of the earth once Bron and Steph and KD retire. These playoffs, this conference finals and finals, we're going to see, as you mentioned, people love familiarity. You about to get familiar with some of these faces. This is the Pacers 2 years in a row conference finals. The Timberwolves 2 years in a row conference finals. You're going to start getting familiar with some new faces.
Yeah, exactly. And then one more point, like you were saying to that too, for all the fans out there who are the casual viewers, don't let the tweets and the graphics of viewership deter you. You know what I mean? Like, don't let that, it's 4 billion people less than last year who watch out of the 18 bit. Like, don't get caught up in that. If the game is good, it's good. Again, people like to see big name teams, which is why some may be pro Knicks, but you still got to watch the game. If you love the game like that, just watch and you'll enjoy. I know when we had Miami and Denver, a lot of people didn't tune into that because there's no Steph, there's no LeBron. But this year, you might have Minnesota and Indiana, where for the NBA, they're going to love that. But all the beat writers and all ESPN, they're going to be like, man, got to go to, here, Minnesota. Yeah, you got to go. That's what it is. You know what I mean? But that's just more of just how people like to complain. You know what I mean? People love to complain about stuff regardless. You got professional complainers out there. So for all you complainers, do your own research, watch the game yourself and enjoy. If not, watch something else.
Hey, Minnesota, they said it's nice in the summertime, but I've heard some reporters, they don't want to go to Indy over there. So they going to have to get comfortable and deal with it. I know it's a lot of reporters that are rooting for the Knicks to win because obviously you lived over here. New York in the summertime is a very, very beautiful area.
Yeah, it's unreal, bro. It's nothing like
it. Manhattan, Harlem. You could be over there in Brooklyn.
LES, all that.
It's so many options. I haven't been to Indy, but from all accounts, what I've heard, even for the All-Star game, a lot of players don't like it. A lot of the media members don't like it. But guess what? If the Knicks do what they're supposed to do, if they stay ready so they don't got to get ready, y'all be in New York. But we'll have to see. Y'all know the vibes here. Bench Mob ENT, we out. Peace.